Hello out there, and today we are wrapping up 2019 with the top 10 knives of the year, and this type of video is always one of my favorites to make. I always enjoy going back through the year and revisiting some of the knives that hit home with me more than any of the other ones, the ones that just really made an impact and became just staples of my collection. And so yeah, very excited to do this today, and this year, guys, more than any other, it is such a mixed bag on this top 10 list. There's a lot of budget stuff. There's stuff from a big variety of different brands. So like no one company has like this big dominating force on this list. It is a little bit of everything. And I think a big reason for that is that I've really tried to sort of explore and go in different directions and try new things this year, but also just my general tastes are swinging back towards the budget stuff just a little bit more than they used to. You know, this year I think of the 10 knives on this list, 6 of them are under $100. So yeah, it is a very different thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to shit all over this list, but it's mine and it's subjective and it's my preference and that's how it is. And the reason why, if you're looking at this stuff as it comes out and you see all this big like price discrepancies and these big differences, the reason why I only go with one list is that I think it's really interesting to look back on this kind of stuff and see where I rank knives versus knives in different pricing tiers, you know, how much they really made an impact on me versus some of the other stuff that I had this year. And so that's why I do it the way that I do it. Some of the other parameters that you might need to know about. First of all, the knife that is on the list, any knife on the list has to be one that's in my collection. So if it's one that I just had in for review and I didn't like it enough to pick it up myself and keep it, I don't have it back for this video, so it's not on the list. And honestly, there were a lot of really good knives that I just picked up for review this year, but I'm pretty happy with these 10 as they are. So yeah, I'm not really worried about anything that I didn't end up keeping. Next, if I've never owned the variation of the knife that is like on the list, that's the only way it's eligible. Meaning something like the lightweight Sage 5 is not eligible to be in this year's top 10. I've already owned a Sage 5. I owned the original version. It won Knife of the Year actually for me the first year that I did this. So as good as the lightweight version is, it might even be better in my opinion than the original. But I've already gone through the Sage 5, not going to do it again, so it will not have a spot on this list, despite being very, very good. Also, everything that you'll see today is either still in production, or was only very recently discontinued, or is one that even if it's discontinued is easy to find and pick up, for the most part. All right, and there might be one small exception, but we'll go through that when the time comes. The last caveat is that this Benchmade Anthem is not going to be eligible. And the reason for that is that it's almost twice the price of anything else on the list. And it just takes the fun out of it. I mean, the Benchmade Anthem was a grail of mine. It's one that, as far as like sentimental favorite, it'd be really hard for any knife to even remotely compete with this over the course of the year. So it's not really fun to have a top 10 list and have this one head and shoulders above everything else. It just doesn't make any sense. You guys know I love this knife, and so it can just stay that way, and we'll talk about the rest of the ones from 2019. The same way a couple years ago when I got my first Chris Reeve, I didn't let that be eligible for the same reason. Just sort of takes the fun out of it. It's not even comparable as far as pricing goes, even remotely, so let's just not talk about it. All right, so now let's get into just a couple honorable mentions. The first one is a pretty recent pickup, and it is the ZT0609, and this knife is an excellent one, and it should be on the list. The only reason why it isn't is that the thing really pissed me off with the way that this pivot is constructed and how difficult it was to disassemble, and you can probably see I just nicked the crap out of it trying to use this really interesting tool. Interesting is the word I will substitute instead of any expletives. So yeah, just for that reason, it's going to be held off. I had to get nitpicky with stuff, guys, and figure out reasons to put a knife here or there. This knife is a wonderful one. It's the first 609 that I ever owned, and I'm sort of sad that I waited as long as I did, but there was a lot of frustration with this pivot, and maybe I'll get to a video about that in the near future as well. The other honorable mention, and I cannot believe that this knife didn't make the list. This is the Tucson, I believe the TS111, and this is one of the best looking knives that I held all year long. Excellent carbon fiber handle scale here, Wharncliffe blade. I don't think I've gotten around to reviewing it, and that still will come. I was planning on doing a top 10 things to know video about this knife, and I just kept bouncing around to other stuff. But man, Tucson has really made an impact on me this year, and this knife was the biggest reason why. So I've got my eye on what Tucson is doing, and definitely have a lot of interest in some of their other models. But this one, it's a beauty. But those are the honorable mentions. So now let's get into what actually made the list, starting with number 10. Number 10 is the Boker Gust. This knife I picked up at Blade Show 2019 back in June. Just for looks and just overall lines, it's really hard to beat the way that this knife just has that visual, eye-catching look. The scale is just fantastic looking, beautiful stonewash. Serge Panchenko design, and honestly it gets extra credit, and maybe it shouldn't, but it gets extra credit just for being a well-made Boker. Boker has so many opportunities with the great designs that they have, and when they actually execute one really well the way this one was done, at least this specific one that I have, they get a little bit of extra credit because I want to like their brand so much, and they actually let me like this knife by executing it well. Maybe a little bit heavy, but I mean, as far as materials go, I still don't have a problem with that. I'm not really worried about that extra weight like the D2 steel. Some people I've seen have rust issues, not me, so I'm just continuing along and enjoying this one. And it's a user, but it's also a pretty darn good looking knife as well. Getting into number 9, another budget knife. Here is the Kershaw Decibel. And I think my review of this knife, I called it the surprise of the year thus far, and this was back in like April or May. And no knife over the course of the entire year surprised me the way this knife did. Yes, it looks futuristic. Yes, it looks like it might not be very functional. But the thing cuts, and it worked. And yeah, it's 8CR, and it's a budget knife, but it just really impressed me the way that Kershaw was able to make a little bit of a unique kind of knife actually function well. And there's no big bells and whistles on this thing. It's just a neat knife that was a breath of fresh air and a change of pace from what you usually see from Kershaw. And honestly, I think more so than any of their other designs the entire year, this one was executed better than all of them. The coating on the blade, it is not going to hold up for forever. It started showing just wear almost immediately after use, but this is a knife I plan to use and continue to use, so not really a big deal. I like it for what it is, and yeah, again, biggest surprise of the year. Definitely deserves a spot on the list. Coming in at number 8, the most recent knife that I reviewed, Rake is back with the P662. There's another version of this knife that has a different blade shape. That's the P661. This one is just Rake hitting a home run the way they tend to do. They just continually make a knife at an excellent price with good materials that you can use, and I don't really know what else to say. The biggest problem with Rake, the only problem with Rake, is that they just don't put out enough models. And I have still to this day not had a Rake that I didn't like. So when it comes to them releasing knives, I mean, I just want them to do more. I like the steel that they have. I like whatever they're able to do to keep these knives below $30. It's wonderful. And this one, I mean, just for value's sake, is pretty darn high up there. All right, now coming in at number 7, if we're talking about value, possibly the best value of the entire year, and one that for me was a really big game changer. Here's the Gonzo Firebird FH71. This knife, if you're just going to pick up a knife that you need to be a user, that is really well made, I mean, this is it right here. D2 steel, which we've already seen on the list once with that Boker gust, but D2 for 25 bucks, a beautiful piece of G10, nice color, excellent action. I mean, I don't know that I want to throw my cards in 100% on Gonzo, because still not sure what direction they're going to go in and what kind of reputable kind of reputation they're going to build. And they do have that history of copying a lot of designs, but if all that's past them and the knives that they're putting out now is what they're going to continue to do, I mean, they have got a very bright future, because there are plenty of people, myself included, that I just want to see a good knife. Make a good knife. And if you can do that, then a lot of other stuff is just going to be water under the bridge. And that's exactly what happened with this knife. The FH71, it just blew so much competition out of the water. More the D2 $40 to $50 range stuff than the budget CRKT and Kershaw stuff. And so there's a lot of other companies out there that are doing knives that are maybe this quality, maybe a little bit better, but for twice the price. And so this one really just took me by surprise as well. The FH71 coming in at number 7 from Gonzo Firebird. And geez, guys, up until now, I think everything on the list has been under $50. But let's get into number 6, where that will be broken with the Spyderco Coochie. And this is a knife that I almost passed up. I almost didn't pick up, but I really just felt the need to get it in hand and try it out. And I was planning on selling it after I got it. And once I picked this one up and had it in hand, for just a minute, I knew it was going to be sticking with me. I just really, really like the design. And even though this looks like a little bit more of a gents piece than a usable folder, it just worked. And the first time I cut with it, no jimping, no special guard, but it just worked in my hand, and it cut very, very well. And it became a knife that I knew I could use and could depend on. And yeah, there was a lot more than what met the eye, that is for sure. And I just really like this this new design from Paul Alexander. I know that there is a newer version, like a CQI version, where there are, at least I think there's some kind of pivot upgrade, so the knife can swing shut a little bit more and be, a little bit more free droppy. If that were the case, maybe this knife would be further up the list than it is, but as it is, it's a great one, a really excellent new Spyderco, and I love that they're still making new models and designs that I'm very interested in. So that is number 6. Getting into number 5 is the only Benchmade on the list, and it is the Super Freak. The Super Freak was a gift from my buddy Zach at Zach Stuff. I mean, what a great gift, right? So big shout out to him over there at his channel. He's doing great things. But the Super Freak was a knife that I'd handled the regular Freak. Really liked that one. This one in M4 with the G10 is one that I've continually said all year long is a knife that Benchmade could just really make a flagship model. It is that good. If they did release the mini version, like the mini Freak, there's no doubt that that would have been the number 1 knife of the year for me. Simply put. No doubt. So this one, I mean, it is different enough from the regular Freak that it needs to be considered on its own merit, even though, it is the same kind of design. Just the G10 scales make it a completely different knife. And yeah, for that reason, it just is head and shoulders above that first version. So what we have here is just an excellent, excellent knife at number 5, and one that I hope Benchmade continues to build off of and make new variations of. Getting into number 4, and let me just say, guys, the last couple knives, number 6 through 1, any of these could have been number 1. They're all really top-notch. This knife, for a while, coming in at number 4, was one that I really thought could have been the number 1 knife of the year, and it is the Spyderco Smok. The Smok is just, it's just awesome. I know there are a lot of people who haven't been a fan of it for whatever reason, and there's certain things that they just don't like about the knife. Some people don't like the clip, they don't like the scales, they want to be able to customize it, and you can see I've gotten some aftermarket hardware just for fun, shits and giggles. But is that stuff really necessary? No, not at all. I mean, I think the knife is really good as is out of box. I love the fact that we have basically a compression lock, but it's activated by a button lock. So I love that button mechanism. It's super smooth, just a lot of fun to actually open and close and fidget with, but it's also good to cut with. The jimping, maybe not the perfect thing, maybe a little bit awkward trying to figure out exactly how you want to hold it and choke up. But once you're cutting with it, that stuff all goes away and it just works. And it's just a great design, and one that I hope that they continue to build off of as well. You know, the Coochie, the Smok, and the Benchmade that we just talked about, that Super Freak, all of these are models that I hope we see more variations of, maybe minis, maybe larger versions, whatever it is. But yeah, it's some great new stuff coming out of these companies that has a lot of potential moving forward. So that is number 4. Getting into number 3 was a knife that was number 1 in my head for the first 6 months of the year. And it's right here. It's the Viper Bolon. Coming in at number 3, Voxn's design. It's the best looking knife that I got all year long. Bottom line. There's not a knife possibly in my collection that is a better looking design, at least to me, aesthetically pleasing than this. You know, there's a couple different versions that you could get. I thought that the titanium, this blue titanium underneath the carbon fiber, was just excellent looking, and so I went with it. It does have its flaws. It does have a little bit of lock stick that, I mean, I've gotten it manageable, but it's still there. The pocket clip is not a particularly good clip. There's some issues there. But, I mean, design and lines sort of carry the day here and make this, for me, a really big home run. M390 blade steel, jimping exactly where you would want to have it when you're using it. So, yeah, it's just a beauty. And despite the flaws, it feels super strong in hand, and it's one that I had very high expectations for, and those expectations were met 100%. And that's why it's so high on the list at number 3. All right, now we're down to the top 2. Man, the top 2 knives of the year. And I think they're both going to be curveballs for you guys, but there's a good reason for both of them. So let's just start with number 2. And number 2 is a slip joint, and it is the GEC number 6. This knife is easily my most carried knife of 2019. I got it near the beginning of the year, and I've carried it in a number of different slips. I've carried it loose in my pocket. Almost any time that I carry a backup knife or a second knife, it's this. And it's made a lot of my other slip joints that I love and are near and dear to me. It's made those knives expendable because this is the one that I always want to carry. Is it good looking? Yeah, of course. That's a big part of it. The blue on this scale is just superb looking. The fit and finish, it looks great. Even when it starts to patina like it is now and just is like starting to discolor, even that looks really good when it needs a polish. And the Wharncliffe aspect of it, the way that it fits in I mean, it's dumb that a knife this small is this comfortable, and it's actually perfect for all of those really small kind of minor tasks that you need a knife for, but you don't necessarily need to bust out a 3.5 to 4 inch blade. I mean, it's perfect, and it's just a knife that has been everything I wanted it to be and more. And sometimes when you pick up a knife, you have a certain expectation. Sometimes you have a low expectation. I never envisioned that when I got this knife that it would be such a mainstay in my EDC and in my pocket. And for that reason, I mean, it was almost number 1 because it has really just taken over my carry. Now, this is not in current production, so it might be a little bit hard to find, but I've searched on eBay and I've searched online, and there are still GEC number 6s from 2019 available at less than $100, which is around what this knife cost anyway. So not huge markup. You can find them if you want to get one. They're out there. So, that's why I deemed it eligible to be on the list. And just the fact that it was so significant a knife for me this year, it had to be on here. So there it is, number 2. And number 1, well, number 1 is a knife that I know I'm not the only one who has seen the appeal of this. And let's just get right into it and talk about it. Number 1 is a Steelwill, and it is the Shaolin. And this is a knife that I knew nothing about. I was online, I saw a picture of it, that it was coming out, and I ordered it immediately. And that's it. There was no hype. It was just released, and I looked at the lines and the aesthetics, and I said, yes, I need to have this knife. And I haven't felt that way about Steelwill for a long time. Some of their knives I've been very impressed with, but the more budget stuff, the stuff made in China has never really been great for me. It's been good, but it hasn't been like the Modus and the Cut Jack. They haven't been home runs for me the way a lot of people have really enjoyed them. So I got this one with just more curiosity in mind than anything, and it absolutely blew me away. We're talking about D2 steel, an excellent red G10 handle scale. I think it's also available in blue or in black. The action on this it's second to none. I mean, I've lubricated it and gotten it even like more drop shutty than than it was out of box. But out of box, it was pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, it's great in that regard. Reversible clip, just a beauty of a knife at the $50 to $55 price point. And this knife was so good that as soon as I got it, I carried it for a few days. I did my initial overview, and then I contacted all my buddies in the pass around group, and I was like, guys, I've got to send this to you in this group. Let me know if you want to check it out, because it is that good. Like, everybody needs to understand, because it was a Steelwill on a different level from anything I'd seen. And I know there are a few people who were very, very impressed with the knife. My buddy Slicey Dicey, and you should be following him if you're not, I think that he put this one pretty darn high up on his list too. And he and I generally see eye to eye. So yeah, it's really cool to see a little bit of recognition for a knife that is so excellent. And my guess, and I haven't really had the opportunity to handle some of the other similar stuff from Steelwill since this one, but my guess is, it looks pretty similar too. So, I mean, they might be just pumping out home runs over there, and it's something I definitely have to look into. But as it is, this one, the Shaolin, I mean, it's just as good as it gets. It's a perfect size. It fits in the hand so super well. Yeah, it is a 10 out of 10 for me, and it is easily the knife of the year. There is not a knife that, when I really think about it, could give this one a run for the money, just because at how it really took me aback at how good it was. So 2 red knives in a row, because last year we had the Southern Grind and Case. Was it CG01 is the name of this one. This is the reigning champion, passing the baton over to the Steelwill Shaolin. So that is it, guys. Those are the 10 knives, top 10 of the year for 2019. Let me know your thoughts. I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion and a lot of things that you agree or disagree with. Let me know what knives I left off the list that should have been on there. Let me know what knives had no business being on here. And we'll have the conversation. We'll talk about it. But more than anything, I hope you all have a very safe end to your 2019 and a great start to 2020, not just in the knife life, but in your personal lives. Hopefully it's all going really well for you. I appreciate the support. I'll talk with you soon. Have a good one.